Matrix vector multiplication, of course, is n squared. The difference between n squared and n cubed when n is 400,000 is really important. And so this method is called the power method.
Welcome to Occupations, the podcast, where we discuss what it's like to hold specific jobs. Occupations is brought to you by lotsofmaps.com, where you fulfill your vintage map gifting needs. Visit lotsofmaps.com.
Hi there, Andy Jaglinzer here for Occupations. Welcome. Today's guest is Mark Crovella. He is the professor of computer science at Boston University. He is also the professor of computing and data science, which is a new unit that is created there, and he's going to tell you more about that right now. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Andy. I'm great. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming. As you know, here in Occupations, we like to talk about jobs. Unusual jobs is usually the case, but interesting jobs, I think, is the most important thing. And I find your job very interesting. There are lots of professors out there in the world, no question about it. But the one thing that I find so interesting about your type of teaching is that you're dealing in technology, and technology changes every 2 seconds.
For sure.
And trying to understand how you keep up on that is going to be what I feel is interesting, and you sort of seeing the future and the now, I think is fascinating, especially in technology. So,
that's great. I'm eager to talk about all that.
Excellent. Full disclosure, Mark is here for the second time. Not his fault. He was the first one I interviewed. And I had some technical issues with some of my gear. So the recording came out awful, not for what Mark said or what I said, but for the technical issues that we had. So Mark was so kind enough to come back a second time and sit through my gobbledygook and go through it again. So thank you, Mark, for making the trip a second time.
No problem.
All the way up the mountain.
Yeah,
here.
It was great the first time, so I'm eager to recreate the magic.
I think by the fifth time, you'll really love it. Okay. Mark, so let's jump into your job. Tell me what a professor of computer science is. We'll start with that part of it. What do you, obviously we know what a professor is. Mm-hmm. We know Boston University's undergrad. You do postgrad as well?
Yep. So I teach at the undergrad and graduate level. I mean, a professor, just to set the stage, really does three things in the context of university. They do teaching, they do research, and they do different kinds of service, both within the university and outside to their profession. And the combination of teaching and research it's kind of an interesting combination because they don't necessarily go together, but it turns out they do support each other pretty well in practice. There are different enterprises. Research is a sort of discovery of new things, pushing boundaries of knowledge. Teaching is trying to pass on what we understand to other students, and the job primarily is finding sort of a balance between those two things on a daily basis.
So obviously there's a difference between a math or an English teacher and a computer science teacher. I mean, clearly your world changes constantly. How does one keep up with that kind of, you must spend more time doing research than you do actually teaching, but maybe I'm wrong, but boy, it seems like it changes every 5 seconds.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows. The time that you spend on research ebbs and flows over the academic calendar, over the yearly calendar. The effort that you put into research, though, continues because, as you say, you have to be aware of what's going on. If you're going to try to contribute to add new knowledge to the world, you've got to be aware of what's already out there and what's being developed on a daily basis. So, yeah, we have to. We all professors, have to spend time just keeping up, just keeping track, typical ways we do that, I mean, it's a very social enterprise, right? So the typical ways you do that are through interacting with other people. You talk to other researchers, you talk to other experts, scientists, and you find out what they're doing. A lot of a lot of the mechanics of research are just conversations, which you're finding out what other people are doing, and you're kind of learning from them what they think is important, what kinds of questions they want to investigate, and what, how they're approaching them, and what strategies they're using, and what they've accomplished. So all those things happen in conversations. Those conversations can be in conferences. They can, getting together in social settings is really important for that. And it's been, as we've gone through COVID, that's definitely taken a hit. But also, research products get disseminated as papers, right? That's what professors do. They write papers. They send them to each other. And so a lot of it is reading what other people have been doing, reading other people's papers. And
do you huddle up with other professors as well?
For sure. So, you will have research group meetings that will involve other professors. Sometimes these are paper reading sessions where you get together and you all review a new paper together or an old paper and try to understand it and work through it and think about new ideas that might come from it. There's a lot of different contexts and settings where these conversations happen.
Yeah, that's great. And as far as outside of your circle of professors, I imagine you do a lot of reading and a lot of surfing the web and seeing what's out there as well. Are there other folks that you lean on as well? Is there a certain sect of folks that you have you're in Boston, so in the Boston community, in the international community? Are there others out there that you reach out to, particularly about a specific subject? Or
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that's really interesting, that's changed a lot in the past 10 years, how much really solid scientific and technical information comes through these sort of non-traditional channels like blogs or through Twitter. It's amazing how high the level of discourse is around technical subjects on these places that didn't exist, 10 or 20 years ago. People put a lot of effort in. People seem to get a lot of satisfaction out of doing a great job explaining a new technology, describing a new research result in blogs, in Twitter, other places like that. And so it's really, it's become a big part of my day to make sure that I'm keeping tabs on those things. And you can spend all day reading extremely, really good, summaries and scientific results.
I believe it. I mean, that's kind of my my fascination with your job, because how can you stop yourself from reading? I mean, there's just got to be endless amounts of data out there for you to sift through. Yeah.
For sure, yeah, it's true. And if you're someone who likes to learn, most professors are like that, then it can be all-consuming. So you have to actually pace yourself and figure out, well, this week, here's how much time I'm going to spend. There are things like teaching and the other responsibilities that I was mentioning where you really have to do those regardless. And so finding the right time to educate yourself is kind of sometimes in between the cracks.
Do you ever find yourself that your students are teaching you?
Oh, man, for sure. I mean, it happens in the classroom. It happens with undergraduates. I had this week a student who came to me, asked me a question about something I've been teaching in lecture, and I've been teaching this for maybe 10 years. And he was right. There was something that I hadn't appreciated about what I was saying, and he really pushed on it, and I learned something pretty valuable about a pretty common subject from his comments. More often, where you really learn from your students is when you're engaging in research with them, because when you're pushing, like I said, pushing those boundaries, it's a team effort, and everybody contributes ideas. And sometimes you're working with students, graduate students typically, and they bring to you an idea or result, and you're like, wow, that changes my whole perspective. I just learned something really important. again, it's part of the social experience of research. It's a very interactive process.
Well, and then on top of that, you're dealing with kids of a different generation. Every few years, they're changing generations, and not only you have to learn the subject matter, but you got to learn how to deal with the kids as well. It must not be easy in combination with the two.
Yeah, it's really interesting that learning styles have changed a lot as years have gone on. Students nowadays they're frequently have done a lot of their learning from video. Producing useful video for them is a much more important component of teaching than it used to be. So, you try to stay in touch with students well enough so that you understand what works for them. At the same time, you recognize that you're the old fogey in their eyes, and there's nothing you're going to do that really makes you relate to them in a way that they would relate to each other. But you try to connect with them where they are so that you can teach.
Maybe you can get one of them to come over and reset my clock on my VCR.
That's right.
All right,
Yeah.
I just dated myself pretty badly there. So we skipped one thing. You are also newly the professor of computing and data science. New unit?
Right. So the data science part, I think, is where what explains what's going on there. Within Boston University, there's been a new organization that's formed around data science, and it's not organizationally in the same place that the computer science department would be, and that's intentional. The reason is that data science, as people are aware, it's starting to pervade many disciplines, many subjects. People using data intensively to investigate questions across all kinds of disciplines and departments in the university and in the world. And so it was important when Boston University started a program in data science to make sure that was a program that was going to be explicitly interdisciplinary, that was going to connect to many different parts of the university. And so for that reason, it's been organizationally separated, and it stands on its own, like a school or a college within a university. So my appointment, my association is now 50% in each of those, 50% computer science and the other 50% in data science. And that means I'm spending my time, evenly split between those two.
So do you deal with, I imagine you deal with the math department specifically and analytics potentially as well? Is that part of the data sciences as well as far as analyzing the data?
For sure. Yeah. So data science we think of as having kind of three components. There's the ability to make decisions using data, which really comes from statistics, and the ability to process data and efficiently get results out of data, which comes from computer science. And then the third part is really the application in a particular discipline. There's all sorts of ways in which the computing and the statistics combine to answer questions, whether it's economics or history or medicine or law or business. So analytics, for example, is popular in business, and we have a close relationship with the business school. Their students take our courses, our students take their courses. We have, a very close relationship with the math, and at BU it's math and statistics in a single department, and very many of the faculty in this unit come from math and statistics, as do many from computer science and other parts, computer engineering, other parts of university too.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do anything today without somebody wanting to capture your information so they can gather statistics on you, whether it's shopping at the store or go online and, can you answer a quick survey? Everybody seems to be using it, and it seems to be in all walks of life. It's inescapable, I think.
Yeah. And, there's good sides and bad sides to that. We do try to understand both those sides. So, for example, on the good side, that kind of information can give you a better experience, one that's more customized to yourself. It may, Amazon may show you product that you think, that's exactly what I want. The downside, of course, is that all this information is being stored, kept within the vault of these large companies, and it's being used to essentially surveil us, to look at what we're doing. And there's a bunch of ways in which that's not good, in which it has a bad impact on society. And one of the things that I like about the computing and data science program is that it explicitly expects students to consider the implications of the technologies they're developing, the ethical implications, the ways in which the technologies they develop impact society, and the ways in which society impacts technology. All of those things are really woven into the curriculum, to the way in which degrees are defined within data science at BU.
Yeah, I imagine it's sort of like creating the atomic bomb. You don't want it to fall into the wrong hands. The information that you're creating, to some degree, obviously not to that level, but I know AI is a big part of computer science these days, and
sure.
There's certainly
Absolutely
people are seeing
amazing
potential
impacts of
danger potentially down the line. Although it's in its infancy, it's already doing some pretty amazing things.
Yeah, we've been taking close looks at generative AI in the past 6 months. Generative AI being the kind that creates images or text. Sometimes you prompt it and it gives you something back, right? And that's been a big source of concern in the university because of the impact that it can have on teaching. Right? Students can use ChatGPT to generate an essay that looks an awful lot like an essay that a person would write on their own. So that's been a topic that we've had symposia, we've worked on policies, we've tried to understand the ethical implications of generative AI, and it's huge. It's just, I think we're just seeing the beginning. It's going to be an enormous impact on society when it really pervades through.
Well, and I think that any student that's generating an essay and cheating their way through school to some degree is a bad criminal. And here's the reason why. Wouldn't you just use AI to create a diploma and skip all the classes completely?
Yeah, it's definitely short-circuiting. It's short-circuiting the educational experience. And you might ask, well, the student only harms themselves when they do that. They only, they take away their own training. They take away their own skills. But it does impact the rest of the students in a classroom, because the rest of the students start to wonder, well, does my grade mean anything? And I'm working hard for this. And
George Santos seems to be doing fine.
Unfortunately, that is, I guess, the case. So we are concerned with both the ways in which each student harms themselves by short-circuiting the training that we're trying to provide, and also harms the other students, right?
Absolutely. Which skews the statistics, which,
right.
See, it's just a big circle of,
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's back it up a little bit and let's talk about you. How long have you been at Boston University?
So I've been at Boston University since 1994, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
Yep. It's been a long time. I came to BU right out of my PhD studies, and it's been a great experience at BU. One of the things about being a professor is that nobody really tells you what you should or shouldn't spend your time thinking about. And you're free to follow the curiosity that you have about subjects. So if you're curious about AI, you can spend your time researching, thinking about ways to improve it or minimize the negative impacts. But for me, that over the course of my time at BU, I've taken a fairly circuitous path through lots of different kinds of research areas, and it's been really, really satisfying because of that.
So let's go back to you grew up outside of Buffalo.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I grew up Amherst, New York, which is outside of Buffalo. Grew up enjoying the outdoors. So when I went to college, I thought I did study biology. I wanted to be a wildlife biologist, and my undergraduate degree is in wildlife biology. So, how did I wind up as a professor of computer science? What happened was I had to pay the bills. So, graduate from college, you go out looking for a job. At the time, it was 1982. We had President Reagan in office. He was fairly aggressively dismantling the Department of Interior at the time, and there was not any great prospects for hiring wildlife managers into the Fish and Wildlife Service. And so jobs were kind of scarce. So I looked around, and I had taken one computer science class in college, but I had also done some programming in high school. I was really lucky that my high school had a couple of teachers that were really up on programming and had some access to some computers, which wasn't that common, really. So I was lucky, and I had some skills, and so I applied for a programming position working for the state of Colorado. I had moved to Colorado because that was seemingly a good place for wildlife biologists to live. But when jobs were not very plentiful, I looked at the state employment options. And at the time, they didn't require you to have a degree in computer science to be a programmer. You just needed to take a civil service exam.
Have you seen a computer yet? Good enough.
That's right. Yesterday I couldn't spell it. Today I am a computer programmer. And so I did well on the exam, and I benefited also from the civil service rules that said that when a position is being filled in the state, they have to interview the top 3 people on the list. So I went into my first interview, and they looked at me and they said, "You don't have any qualifications for this. What are you doing here?" So I left. I went into my second interview, and they said, "I don't know. We'll take a flyer on you." And they hired me, and it was great. I asked them, "Do you have some books I can read before I start?" And I read the books, and they were great about training me and giving me responsibility. And so I worked as a computer programmer for a couple of years, and then we moved back to the Buffalo area, and I took another job, still thinking that I was really ultimately wanting to get into wildlife biology. Took another job as a computer programmer. This time it was with a company that did more scientific kind of programming, and I started to really enjoy that. That's when I started to think, maybe I should actually get some education in this field. So I went and got a master's degree. The company that I worked for was super supportive, allowing me to go and take my classes while I was working, and got my master's degree. And I noticed during my master's degree, it seemed like the professors really enjoyed their jobs and were doing something kind of fun and cool. And I had a great mentor there who gave me some advice about life in academia. And I was like, well, maybe I'll go and get a PhD. And so I did that, and came out of the PhD and was lucky enough to get hired at BU. And
So that was your first stop, was BU as a teacher?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's certainly, I mean, I never expected it. It's been, like I said earlier, it's been a fantastic job, and I've found it super satisfying and enjoyable, but I never expected when I was studying wildlife biology that I'd be a professor of computer science.
How about combining the two and computing outdoors?
Well, so I've been beaten to that punch now. I would love to do that kind of thing, but there's some amazing computer scientists who work with, animal populations. It's a big data problem, collecting movement and interaction data from animals. There's quite a few people who do great work in that area, and I haven't been one of them, unfortunately.
I'll give you an idea. You can take it and run with it, but how about
All right.
teaching computing to animals?
Oh, it's a growth area.
Mm-hmm.
It's a growth area. I hadn't actually.
Yep. You're welcome.
The light bulb has gone on.
You are welcome.
Lotsofmaps.com. Vintage, local, national, and world maps for an affordable price. 99% of our maps are $25 or less. Great as gifts. Frame them or put them under glass for your home, vacation home, or as a memory of a special place. Lotsofmaps.com.
You know, I talked about a couple of early programming jobs. In both those cases, the only way that I could have been successful was that a couple of people, key people, looked at me and said, I'm going to help this guy find his feet and help him figure out how to succeed at the job. And having people like that in your life changes the whole course of your life. And I've just been incredibly lucky in that regard. Incredibly lucky.
So obviously, having mentors, having people that you can learn from, people that can influence you in one way or another is important. But did you ask for that help? Or did they volunteer it? They just looked you in the eye and said, this guy's got something special. Because to me, I think with what I see in some younger people today is the ask is not there. The communication skills is not necessarily there to ask for help, to ask to potentially take a new position or to just inquire about things in general. Did you feel like you asked for help?
I mean, I've always been lucky that I do ask a lot of questions, and I'm super curious, and that I think is beneficial in life to just ask people how things work and why things work the way they do. You can succeed a lot by just sort of listening to what people say when you ask those questions. So that's been good, but I do think that ultimately the kind of mentorship I got was selfless on the part of the mentors. It was people just saying, I just care about other people and I want to help people. And I was one of the people they were helping. It wasn't that I was particularly special. A lot of the mentors that I had were just really good with everybody, really worked hard to help everyone around them.
I'm going to ask you about advice for people that want to, get involved with computers. Obviously, that's a really wide swath there, but and then the other is maybe somebody who might want to teach computing at some point. Other than the advice of attending Boston University, and
that was going to be number one.
What would you suggest people do? I mean, there's nothing like an internship or a way of talking to somebody and learning about what the job takes on a daily basis.
Right. I often have students come to me and say, I've got some free time. Do you have a project I can do? That's a win-win, right? They learn something that they wouldn't have learned in the classroom, and I get to work with them and, maybe push something forward that I'm interested in. This kind of idea of looking around for an opportunity to just sort of pick up knowledge by contributing your time, I think is a great strategy. I think you can use that strategy in a lot of different settings. The other thing I would say is I would just circle back to the incredible resources that are out there. When you're trying to learn something technical, there are incredible resources now. I mean, when we consider applicants to our, like our master's program, if they don't have one of the things that they need to succeed in the program, we tell them, look, there's great coursework out there on edX or Coursera or Khan Academy. Just go and study that, and you'll be ready when you arrive, right? That's really high quality stuff out there. You can go a long way with what you can get for free on the internet. So that combination of sort of diving in and volunteering and finding an opportunity to contribute your time so that you can learn, and then extracting what you can off of the free information, that's the free education that's out there, it's I think a great strategy. And I think it'd take you far. And eventually, you do wind up getting an internship. One thing leads to another. You get to know people, people get to know you, and good things happen. But computing, you mentioned computing specifically. Computing is great in that regard, in that we all do have access nowadays. We're privileged to have access to computers, and if you do, another aspect of the freeness of information is that really powerful programming tools are free. now, and you can start messing around and learning to program without much cost other than the computer that hopefully you've already got.
I think of the word passion. I mean, I would imagine you were very passionate about the outdoors, and then I'm assuming you became passionate about computers, where you are today. I mean, but you obviously
Totally
had
different.
two passions.
Yeah, it's totally different.
So, it's easy to say follow your passion, but if you have multiple
That's a great-
passions,
yeah.
If you don't have that passion, are you still following that path?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there was a time that I thought of computer programming as, like I said earlier, paying the bills. It was just what I did while I was trying to work my way into a different industry, into wildlife and biology. And I think what happened was I got passionate about computing after some time, right? So one of the things that I think is, somewhat dangerous about the phrase "follow your passion" is that your passions many times derive from your experiences, and you find out about something only if you try something that maybe doesn't really seem all that exciting to you at first, and then you realize, oh, there's something really, really cool here. There's something really valuable, and I want to do more of this. It wasn't, I mean, my first computer programming job, I was doing financial programming, which is essentially relatively sort of straightforward, tabulation of numbers into reports and tables. And it wasn't necessarily looking to me like a bang up career, but then it was luck and mentorship that gave me the opportunity to work in a more scientific setting where all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is amazing what programming can do. So I've definitely become passionate about computer science. I think what happened was I realized that software gives you the ability to create things that you imagine. And it's incredibly satisfying to do that. It's incredibly satisfying to create things. It taps into the creativity that many people really strive to express. So being able to sort of have an idea and then sit down and turn it into something, so a realization of something that actually works based on that idea is what instilled that passion in me. It's what got me really to realize that computer science was pretty cool.
Tell me a little bit about your day-to-day as a professor. This is post-COVID.
Right.
I'm sure there was a period of time where you weren't even going into the
Right.
into the school at all.
Right.
I would imagine you still do some work from home. I
Yep.
would imagine.
Yep.
So what's your day-to-day like as far as, I think of, just as a layman, I think of, okay, you have to have time to do research. You have to have time to teach students. And then the other thing is how much of your job is virtual. I would imagine there's a lot of virtual students as well. Yes or no?
Yes and no.
A little bit.
I mean, so I guess the first thing is when you start as a professor, one of the first things that happens is you have a sort of a culture shock where you realize that all of a sudden you used to be able to, when you're a graduate student, you used to be able to sit and think about a problem all day long. And all of a sudden you realize there's about 1,000 things that are all happening at the same time. And you have to, very quickly you develop skills at picking up an issue, a subject, a topic, thinking about it for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, and then moving on to the next thing like that. And so you may have half a dozen research projects going. Each one of those, you may think about each of them for half an hour or an hour. You may work with a student for an hour. Those things force you to be very agile, just to develop the facility at switching contexts, right? Mixed in with that is that teaching is a steady, consistent activity over the course of every day, every week. So you know that you're gonna be in the classroom on a regular basis. You're going to be thinking each day, part of the day, you're going to be thinking about either what you're about to teach or what you just did teach or how the students are doing, or what's the status of all the processes like the grading and the lecture preparation stuff that you need to have. And then, like I said, the third component of what I do is work within the university to further all the different goals. The university is a bundle of different missions and goals. Now I'm at the point where I've been there for a long time, and I'm involved in all kinds of activities that are helping to develop new degree programs, helping to develop new courses. I have mentoring roles with other newer faculty, advisory roles on different committees within the university and so forth, and that can actually be remarkably time-consuming, all of that.
So clearly you enjoy your job.
Absolutely.
And the fact that your area of expertise has exploded during your tenure, from 94, where were we in computing in 94?
Right. World Wide Web in 94 was something that some people had heard of, most people had not. That's where we were, right?
Right.
We had fixed line telephones and no World Wide Web, and most people did not send email to each other.
Right. Yeah. Thinking about how we thought we were moving fast in that era,
Yeah.
to knowing now today how incredibly fast things are moving. And are we slow today compared to 20, 30 years from now? Of course, we'll be sitting back and letting the computers do all the work anyway, but we were saying that at the beginning in the 90s too, though, that computers are going to take our jobs and all that stuff. And some have, but
it's concerning. I mean, It's definitely concerning. And it does seem that things are accelerating when you look at, I think the technology field is in shock over what's happened in AI in the past year, 2 years. I think that's clearly going to change society fundamentally in ways that we're only vaguely anticipating right now. And that's just an example of acceleration. I mean, change has been happening, technological change has been happening faster and faster and faster. And all of a sudden, it just seems like it's exploding.
Yeah. I know this is a hard question to answer, but pick up your crystal ball for a moment. Where do you think we're headed next in the computer world? It's hard to really know this, but what do you see in 10 years? What do you see in 5 years as far as what you'll be teaching?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, let me start by just saying one of the things we're just talking about AI advancing so quickly. And one of the things that's really coming into focus for me just in the past year is if you think about how we've taught computer science for the whole time that I've been a computer scientist, the foundation of learning to think like a computer scientist comes in largely from learning what it means to program a computer in all its various dimensions, how to do it effectively, efficiently, how to do it correctly. That's where students start. It's just learning how to correctly direct a computer. So creating software is like, it's like tied up with the persona of what a computer scientist is and does. And all of a sudden we're seeing AIs capable of creating its own software, right? What does that mean for computer science as a discipline? When instead of needing a computer scientist to write software, I think we're going to see soon that everyday people can ask their AIs to create software for them, right? So how do we teach computer scientists, and what's the role of coding going to be in 5 years? That's a really good question. Will we have coursework that is concerned with how to prompt an AI to create software? Is that discipline that we'll study as a kind of new kind of programming or new kind of skill? That's one of the things that I'm just trying to wrap my head around right now.
Do you think you'll at one point be teaching how to stop AI from doing its function because it's out of control and we're You're now
It's-
teaching the rebels how to fight back.
It's a very good question. There's a lot of really vigorous debate about whether we at some point may, I don't want to say lose control, but not anticipate the results of the kinds of AI that we're creating. And I think it's a very fair question. Some people get very worried about it. I'm not losing a lot of sleep right now, but I think we really need to think about it. I think we really need to be careful with any kind of system in which we grant control to an AI of some kind. Any kind of system in which we tell an AI, I'll hook you up to my E-Trade account and you can trade for me, or this is real, right? Or I'll hook you up to this robot and let you run on your own, or I'll let you manage my schedule. These things are very close to being widely used. I mean, this kind of thing is already used in pockets in small places, but widely used across society, I think, is right around the corner. And we got to be careful. We got to think about the implications. We got to think about how to make sure that the AI remains the tool that implements our wishes, follows our goals.
Yeah, and it does come down to humans, doesn't it, who make that decision to make that leap to doing the wrong thing with it. And obviously you don't have the answers to this. Nobody does. But how do you police that? Who knows? Who knows how you keep that under control? But again, we talked about the nuclear,
Right.
The atomic bomb getting in the hands of the wrong person. I mean,
Right.
how do you do that with computers? And you kind of can't in a free society, for sure.
I think we just have to be very, very aware and intentional about what we're doing. We have to have a lot of conversation. It's not clear that there's enough conversation happening right now, whether enough people are talking about the things to watch out for, the ways in which things can go wrong. But we're trying. And within the academy right now, there's a lot of conversation. I'm hoping that it's going to expand into society. And there has been some, we've had some reporters asking the spokesperson for the president, what about, AI that's going to destroy the world? Should we be worried? So there's some discussion that's starting to leak out into the popular press. We need to really have that discussion more broadly. We need to be able to think about this stuff carefully.
Scary because up until recent year maybe, the idea of computers literally taking over has been nothing but a cartoon fantasy. Right. And now you're hearing the scientists worried,
right?
The professors worried. Wow, we may be here.
Yeah,
not to be.
Some are worried.
Sky is not falling, but at the same time,
most are just aware that there's potential problems, and we need to make sure we short circuit those and don't let those things happen. But
yeah, a couple of years ago we were worried about the Kardashians, and now it's AI. Which is going to take over the world first?
Yeah, well, combine the Kardashians and AI, and I think we have something unstoppable, to be honest.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Mark, what lesson from the past? You've got a fairly long history here with computers. What lesson from the past has taught you something in the computer world that has taught you something about where we are now? Was there something maybe somebody said to you, something you read, maybe a change or a shift in the way computers worked, or a new language or a new theory? Was there something that sort of taught you a lesson about how to deal with today's teaching of computer science?
I think one thing, when you talk about teaching, I think one thing that's become clear to me over time is that the process of making money from restricting access to information is a losing game. And teaching is in my corner of the world, it's increasingly becoming a process where information is really given away for free, right? We still teach because it's a human to human process of helping someone understand. But the fundamental materials, the idea that textbooks should be these expensive things that students have to buy every year, or that, you can only learn what's going on in science by, subscribing to an expensive journal, Science, Nature, and you have to read those things in the library. All of that is going away, and the ability for people to get access to really good, high-quality information is becoming easier and easier and easier. And, my favorite example is Wikipedia, because I know many teachers still prohibit their students from using Wikipedia. They say, well, it's unreliable, and you don't know what the motivation is behind the person who wrote the article and so forth. And that's certainly true for certain subjects. But in my area, Wikipedia is a lovely, beautiful resource. It's one of the finest distillations of mathematics, general science. It's incredible how useful it is. And, that was all created by people who were volunteers.
Do you feel like you need to maybe fact check your way through Wikipedia when you use the things that you use, or read the things that you read on Wikipedia? For that same reason, there's certainly a lot of false information out there. And I'm not even picking on Wikipedia, internet in general. I don't know if you know this or not, but not everything on the internet is factual. I think I used that in the last podcast, by the way, too, that same line. So I'm really repeating myself. Okay.
Well, it's really interesting how much that varies with the subject matter that you're talking about. When you're talking about, if I go to somebody's blog and they're talking to me about they're writing about a political event, something that happened recently in politics, you have to process all of that with an enormous grain of salt and a filter and consider the perspective. But when you go to a blog and someone's summarizing a beautiful mathematical result, it's not likely that they've got an agenda. You just don't incorporate that in your filter, right? What you're really doing is you're appreciating that they took a lot of time to tease out a subtle or difficult subject and explain it to you. So I just want to sort of emphasize that there's these pockets where free information is incredibly high quality. And I don't think we always appreciate, when we look at all the junk that's out on the internet, we don't always appreciate that there's also an enormous amount of really wonderful stuff. It changes my job. It changes the way I do my job.
That's great. You're right. It certainly can be a great resource if we're careful, but you're right. Optimistically, you're right. There is probably more truth out there than fiction, but Mark Crovella, professor of computer science and professor of computing and data science at Boston University. Thank you so much for coming by and giving us a whole lesson on where we're going in life and how to teach our children. They are the future, so I understand, as the song goes. So thank you for stopping by and giving us a lesson on life.
Thanks. It's been my pleasure, Andy.
I can't wait for the third time you come by. It'll be really excellent.
That's
we got
gonna
the
be
squeaky
amazing.
chair, so maybe that'll... Please stop by again, Occupations, and listen to our next broadcast coming up soon.
Occupations has been brought to you by lotsofmaps.com. Please follow Occupations the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to find information about our next episode or to see what past episodes are available.